Hi, everyone. This is Bryan Jungers from eSource. We are at the Act Expo 2024 in Las Vegas. We are in the SHAED Solve Studio, and I am lucky to be joined here with Ryan Garoogian from Southern California Edison. Ryan, will you tell folks what it is you do for SCE?
Yeah, thanks, Bryan. So my name is Ryan Garoogian. I'm a senior engineer with our distribution system planning organization, and I work with our engineers and I plan the electrical system, looking to forecast into the future and try to see where we anticipate load growth occurring and how do we anticipate that and continue to build the electrical grid in a safe, reliable way.
That is a very important job. And it's something we've already talked about several times today with other folks in this room in interviews. And this seems to be a rather confusing point, I think, for perhaps, for example, some fleets that are trying to electrify, not understanding the requirements for upgrading their service or getting a new line extension or the need for a substation. To simply put this, is there an analogy you could use for like what's actually required for someone who doesn't understand that whole grid side world?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I see it come time and time again where customers that are not like too understanding of what the electrical system is having a hard time getting to kind of the solution to this question. What I would tell customers the most is to contact the utility as early as they can and just start that conversation with the utility. The utility has a lot of information that can help guide the customer to help them figure out the questions that they need to ask and help get answers to those questions. And the utility, at least at Southern California Edison, is really looking for those customers to have that early engagement to help us better understand what the customer wants. Because we also really want to know what the customer wants so that we can provide the appropriate service for them.
This may be a dumb question, but if a customer is not like a key account with a designated rep, who do they actually talk to at the utility?
Yeah, so that is a good question. We have a few, what I'll say are email inboxes or shared mailboxes where we can direct customers to send out communication to us, and then depending on what the question is, a certain type of representative will come out and kind of interface with that person.
Okay. Now, a criticism I have heard lobbied against utilities is that the reactive process of essentially a customer picking up the phone, calling the utility saying, hey, I need a service, for these electric vehicle chargers. Can you help me out? The utility says, sure, we'll do a grid study. That takes some amount of time. And they say, oh, actually, it's gonna be a significant upgrade requirement. And that's going to take, a year or 2 years or whatever. That process is described as too slow and cumbersome or not streamlined enough. What is your view on that? Is there a way of making it faster or less cumbersome?
Yeah, so I have seen that happen a couple of times, and I do share the sentiment from the customers. It can be a little frustrating at times to think that you have a business plan and kind of a path forward to becoming energized, and then you come to the utility and you see that timeline kind of extend. We live in a state that has challenges, regulatory speaking, so there are some things that we really can't get around. But what I'll say is, at least at the SCE utility, we're trying to give customers tools that they can use that are publicly available that customers can use whenever they want to. And we have this tool called Dr. PEP, or DRPEP, where customers can go search capacity on our electric system even before they have any interaction with the utility or make contact to get service. And we try to let customers know that they can go early and often to that public portal to be able to kind of understand what it is the utility grid capability is in the area that they're looking to interconnect.
That's good. So you enable some self-serving there, let folks get ahead of the process maybe a little bit. California also and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to have some new rules in place trying to essentially dictate how long the utility has before they have to energize a system based on a request. It's not a whole lot of time. It's a pretty short window of time. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so the new tariff that our regulators have instated on the three investor-owned utilities, so ourself, PG&E, and SDG&E, it's a different rule in each company, but our rule is called Rule 29. It's electric vehicle tariff, and the PUC is trying to get us to be able to be energized with a customer's request between 120 and 150 business days from that application submittal. It is difficult, but we are trying to streamline a lot of our processes, mainly in the permitting and pre-construction and construction process, to try to meet those timelines. So doing certain things more in parallel, where previously we tried to do things more serial to make sure that we got step by step through the process. Now we're doing certain things in parallel and maybe taking a little bit of risk that a previous step might not complete to try to meet these timelines, because they are aggressive, but we're really trying to meet the rule, which is trying to get these things energized quickly.
Yeah, it's commendable, and I think if you are able to do that, you'll be faster than most utility response rates. And I know you're having to be kind of creative with some of these service requests. So you tell folks about your new pilot with the load control management system.
Yeah, so at SCE, we're piloting a way for a customer to interconnect if, when they do come to us for service, that we study the system and there are constraints or limitations on the system to fully serve them. How do we partially serve this customer while the utility is performing the necessary upgrades to bring that capacity to fully serve? So we call it the Load Control Management System, or LCMS, and it's a pilot that we are working on with customers to be able to allow them to interconnect their full hardware. So I'll just give you an example. If they want 10 chargers, but the utility only has capacity for 5 chargers right now, and we need to do upgrades on our system to bring capacity for the additional 5 chargers, we can allow for this customer to install control systems on their side, allow them to install all 10 physical chargers, and then use the control system to manage their load to not exceed the 5 charger output limit. This is a pilot that we're working on where it's customer-owned, customer-operated equipment, so nothing installed by the utility, but we must review and kind of certify that customer equipment before we feel comfortable with letting them install it and operate it.
All right. And it makes sense. I mean, mostly we're looking at worst case scenario. We need to be very sure that the critical peak demand from these systems is not overwhelming the circuits, right? And so if you have the assurance you need that you're not going to overwhelm the circuit, then you can get away with more, right?
Yeah, and just to add a little bit more to that, so this pilot is really meant to be what we're calling a bridging solution, or a temporary solution while the utility still performs the necessary capital work to get the customer fully energized. We'll have to talk about, if this pilot is successful and there's like really no big issues, whether our regulator wants to think about how do we make this a permanent feature for a customer, and if it is permanent, then we need to somehow incentivize customers to participate in it. Because we can't have a customer on load control for the rest of their operation without being able to provide some type of incentive for them in terms of the otherwise fully available service. But this could potentially reduce the amount of capital that the utility needs to provide or spend to upgrade the system and be able to get these customers online more quickly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's merging many new alternative solutions for trying to fill that gap between full service upgrade for the utility and what the customer currently has now. And what's your view or the utility's view on some of these mobile, deployable, portable power other sort of stopgap solutions that are in the market?
Yeah, no. So at least at SCE, we are very interested in those other stopgap or temporary measures. We, in our general rate case, we have asked for money to spend to go purchase a few mobile battery energy storage devices, as well as construct a mobile substation for this exact reason. That we're trying to figure out ways when we have larger upgrades on the system, they take years to complete. And we really want to try to have these temporary solutions to be able to get these customers online in some fashion while we're trying to do these upgrades. And LCMS is one option, but these other solutions that are grid owned and grid controlled can also help kind of be that stopgap measure.
Yeah. And are you seeing much like kind of willingness or openness in the market for folks to explore opportunities like charging as a service, shared charging infrastructure, depots, fleet services sort of options?
I'm not sure I have seen too many details, other than I know of a few companies that are coming to SCE asking for service to create electric depots, but they don't own any vehicles. So there are certain companies like Terawatt or Forum Mobility or EV Realty, or there's a few others, but I think these are all playing in the same space where they're looking to create electric vehicle charging, and then they're going out and trying to obtain customers to bring them to their service.
Yeah. We just talked to Will this morning from EV Realty, and they think they have a unique model for doing just that. I'm just curious to know if you have any other view on creative ways for everyone to kind of get their needs met when there's so much pressure to hit certain timelines. I mean, we could have been electrifying for the last 10 years, but now we need to do it all over the next 3 years or whatever.
Race to the finish.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the other thing that I think is interesting is certain companies are trying to integrate battery energy storage into the charging unit itself. It adds a lot of complexity in how you would interconnect it to the grid, but I think that type of functionality or feature could really provide a lot of net benefit to a customer, especially if you don't need much, what I'll say, demand from the grid. You can kind of slow charge a battery and then fast charge the battery to the car. That helps out the grid and it helps out the customer if it were to be done in the right way and it's economical. What I've heard is that those units are pretty expensive at the moment, but if they can be brought down in price, I think that would be a great solution.
Yeah, we actually looked at co-located batteries at DC fast charging stations pretty closely last year, and it is a really effective solution. The biggest challenge we see is that even though the battery costs are coming down, they're not coming down quite fast enough relative to the overall economics, and you really need another use case, like another market for these batteries to be able to bid in. Yeah,
play in the market, and if they're not being used by the vehicles, be able to push back to the grid and give another grid benefit in addition. I agree.
Yeah, and there are already many charging stations out there, like Electrify America has many, EVgo has some, where there are batteries there being used for demand charge management, but that demand charge management, eventually that use case may actually go away as utilization of the station goes up, and so there's an opportunity, like, could we use those batteries for grid services?
I agree. To me, that question is really in the regulatory space, and how do we work with our regulators to help them better understand what those benefits are and how beneficial they can be, and help create or modify rules and tariffs to allow for the utility to be able to participate in that space.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. It's been great talking with you. Anything else you want to say before we jump off?
No, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.